Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander. And on tonight's episode of the podcast, I'm joined by Trevor from Saturday's Warrior BYU podcast. We're both part of the College Huddle Network. In fact, had Trevor on multiple times on the Big 12 Huddle on YouTube as well. All links will be in the description of this video or podcast, however you're listening. But Trevor, thanks so much for coming on, joining, and hopefully telling me how Oklahoma State can pull off an upset here this weekend in Provo.
If that's the case, then we might need to pause this and come back so I can get some different notes together. But it's certainly going to be a good game. I don't think at any point in the Big 12 can you count any team out. I think any game, even though there's some that are less likely than others to pull off upsets, I think any game could be a trap game, and so I wouldn't just count Oklahoma State out just yet.
Well, you know what? Vegas has it as a 7-point, as Oklahoma State is a 7-point dog here right now. They're speculating something with a 33-26 ending. But you said you got to take some notes. You guys haven't lost a game this season yet. I don't know if there's any notes you could find, really. I do know one thing here for sure. Saw you tweeted out here recently where BYU had I think it was a 30 or a 60% chance to win 6 games this season. And we're sitting here right now and after the 6th game, you guys are undefeated. So how are you guys feeling? How's the BYU fan base doing right now?
I mean, BYU is feeling good. So what's going on is BYU being picked preseason for Big 12 was predicted to come in at 13th out of 16 teams. And Kalani Sitake is just saying, hey, you know what? We're not mad because you guys don't know what we know. And we're just excited to show you. And, it's just like, okay, he's saying the right things. We'll see. Like, there's kind of this quiet confidence behind the scenes. And this team has come out and backed all of that up. And it hasn't been, they didn't talk a lot of talk, but they've come out and they've been walking the walk so far this season. And so we feel good about that. And we're bowl eligible. Last year, we were so close to getting bowl eligible thanks to Oklahoma State, BYU. Well, not just because of Oklahoma State, but BYU had it within their grasp in that final game of the season and lost it. And so we've already exceeded in 6 games through half of this regular season. We've already exceeded what we did last year. And so BYU fans are ecstatic. And I think, I projected us to go 6-6 in the offseason. And so I think we just have to be happy with where we're at this point, that, hey, we are now bowl eligible. That is great. We've accomplished. Everyone said that was really the baseline for what this team really needed to do to feel like it's having a successful season. And so BYU's accomplished that. So at this point, we're playing with house money. We've already exceeded what Vegas thought we would do. I think they had us at 4.5 games for the season. And, and so at this point, you can kind of play loose and free and continue to enjoy it and take one game at a time. Back in the late 2000s, there was a year under Bronco Mendenhall. It was 2009, and we had what was called the Quest for Perfection. And BYU had a lot of great talent, a lot of guys that played in the NFL and were set up to have a lot of success, and ended up just getting completely destroyed by TCU and Florida State, both at home that season, which really demolished that. And so I think fans, at least me, I can't speak for everyone, still kind of has that in the back of my mind. You know what? Don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We don't want to count our eggs before they hatch. Let's just enjoy one game at a time. And I hope, truthfully, that the team has that mindset too. It's great to know and have the confidence, hey, we could go compete with anybody. But right now, we are competing against Oklahoma State next, and that is who we need to be focused on. And so I hope that the team has that mentality. And real quick, though, you also mentioned the spread, and I know you wanted to hear good news today, but looking at it, BYU has beaten the spread in every single game this season, and we haven't just beaten it, we've demolished it by an average of 16.1 points per game. So at this point, BYU loves being told the spread and that the game's going to be close, or that BYU's not favored or whatever. And I think they use that as a bulletin board fodder to put up to the team, keep them motivated.
Well, we don't need to give you guys any bulletin board material. You're already off and rolling way better than expected, as you just said and laid out. Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think that the expectations, because I know on our end, we're dealing with the opposite deal here. We thought expectation-wise, we'd play through the first 3 conference games. You and I talked about this offseason. Maybe we'd be 2-1. Maybe we'd be 3-0. Hopefully, we wouldn't be 1-2. Instead, we're 0-3 to open up conference play on our end, and our expectations are way different. But why do you think what were we not seeing out of BYU? What were we not kind of, what was Satake really going through his head of, hey, you know what? We'll love to go out there and prove it and show it, because what were we not seeing?
There's a couple things. So I'll start on defense and offense. So on the defensive side, and on both sides, I would put coaching would be a big part of it, because last year there was a big overhaul in town. We went to the transfer portal and brought in a lot of guys. And now this season, we didn't bring in nearly as many new transfer portal guys. We went a little bit. And so I think perhaps there's some cohesion getting guys established in the system. But on the defensive side, so last year was year 1 under defensive coordinator Jay Hill, who was previously the head coach at Weber State, who had a lot of success. And he came in. We knew that it was going to be a little time to establish his defense, and which is what he's known, well, obviously as a defensive coordinator, but he's really done really well at defense. And we expected, okay, BYU is going to be able to turn it around on this side of the ball. Nobody thought it would be this quickly, especially after losing some guys last year out from eligibility, and Ben Bywater, who was one of our leading linebackers, and we were really, one of the captains of the team. We were really expecting a lot from him. Had an injury from last season. Thought he'd come back this year. Ultimately, he's not going to be able to. So he's retiring from football, at least college football for now. And we thought that was going to really set us back. But, BYU's really been able to put it together. And how I've heard it described is that these players are saying like, yeah, we had a better scheme last year, but we weren't exactly sure if we knew where we were supposed to be. Whereas this year, the defense feels like, okay, now we understand the scheme. We know where we're supposed to go. So we don't have to think about what we're supposed to do. We just go act and make a play. And so, the defense has really allowed our offense now on the other side to play a little more of the type of ball we want to play and take more chances, because we know that the defense has our back. And so that has allowed BYU to, I think, do a little bit more offensively. And now that's not to say we haven't had our struggles, but I think a lot of the improvement we've seen is under coaching and experience. So the O-line, which was a big issue for BYU last year, we got a new O-line coach, and he has really, he spent some time in the NFL, and he has come in and he has really helped establish this offensive line. You and I have spoken about Caleb Etienne, who was previously at Oklahoma State. He was just a disaster last year, and people saw his size and thought he was just going to be a revelation. And he, quickly showed why he was losing minutes at Oklahoma State and transferred to BYU. Now this year, he is one of the highest graded teams, players on the team, often in PFF. And has just really been a stalwart there on the O-line. And now there's even some talk of him potentially being drafted and being another left tackle, would be the 4th for BYU in recent years, going to the NFL, if that ends up being the case. And then the other is Jake Retzlaff. He, you guys know him well, played against him and saw his struggles, but he's matured a lot. We had a QB battle in the offseason with Gary Bohannon, who is another quarterback you guys, I believe, are acquainted with. No, too soon still.
Just Gary Bohannon, 1, he beat us, and then 2, hasn't played in any game again that's been good. So it just is a bizarre deal there. When you talk about former guys who played against Oklahoma State or quarterbacks, it's like saying, like, all right, Avery Johnson's going to lose every single game from here on out after beating us and thumping us at their place. It was a bizarre game that Gary was playing that well in the Big 12 championship, if I remember correctly. And since then, he's just jumped between university to university. So it's just an odd deal overall.
Yeah, BYU fans, I don't think were ecstatic when we heard we were getting Gary Bohannon coming, and the fact that we hoped that Jake Retzlaff would be able to put it together in the offseason, and the fact that the QB battle went into, they wouldn't even name the QB before our season opener against Southern Illinois, and it was just like they probably have him, but they won't name him, like, 'cause they're not a lot of confidence. What is it? And so after throwing some very detrimental interceptions as well as fumbling the ball last year, fans were ready to turn on Jake Retzlaff, and early in the season, it still took a while to get people to come around to him. Obviously, at this point, we're now 6-0, and he's really shown his growth even throughout the season. Like, he's made mistakes, and we've slowly seen his progress going from getting pressured and trying to save the day and throwing an interception to, starting to take sacks instead of just throwing it away, to now he's able to get the ball out instead of taking the sack. And so we've seen him, little thing. I don't know if that's a little thing. It's a huge impact thing, but things that you'd expect a quarterback to do. So we've seen him progress, and that has just allowed us to play our game. Now, we've still struggled some in the run game, but that was a very long-winded answer to your question as to why we're doing better. But I think, to summarize all that, I would bring it into coaching and then cohesion with the team.
Yeah, I know we're hoping for a couple things to work right for us this Friday. I keep wanting to say this weekend is like it's a Saturday game because I'm so used to it. But there's one thing for sure. I'm hoping that basically Jake has the same kind of game last year he did against us, and that he does this year, because basically it just did not work out that well for him. At the end of the day, he was doing a lot of those things we're saying, though. He wasn't eating the ball, he wasn't just going down with it or just throwing it out of bounds. That's one of the things that I wish Alan Bowman was doing a little bit more this season. It just seemed like he was throwing the ball in a lot of tight windows. And now we're going to have a new quarterback under center. Is there any kind of worry you guys have in the same kind of deal with Oklahoma State, where when we see, the back quarterback's in, it's almost worse? Usually it's like, okay, well, it should be easy, but it's worse. So far against Utah, that was the case. Cam Rising didn't play against us. But do you guys have kind of those same type of deals where in the past, hey, you got the back quarterback in, it provides you a different look, and you guys are kind of thrown off center at all?
Yeah, last year happened to us twice with Kansas and TCU, and we got burned bad. So it can happen. Now, it happened mid-game with SMU. It took 2 drives, and SMU was in the negative yards, and they pulled their starting quarterback and they put in Jennings. And so we saw that with him, and that was a good hard-fought game, but they didn't score any touchdowns. And this is a team that's a high-flying offense. And then also Baylor. So he wasn't brand new, but I think it was the previous game he'd come in now. So he didn't start the season, but he had started before playing against BYU. And I think my thoughts are that your QB has played enough and Jay Hill has a way of getting his defense prepared that I think they'll be ready for, they'll kind of know what to expect. And something that we did against Baylor. Now, Baylor was a team that scored the most on us this season, but something they did is it looked like they were really trying to force the quarterback to beat us, but they were determined to stop the run. And they were pretty effective at stopping the run. But like I said, Baylor, after BYU got a big lead early, Baylor came back and it was a close one. So, I guess we will see if he may, have something up his sleeve. The team may have something up their sleeve that BYU hasn't seen yet. But I feel pretty good about this defense being able to lock in and make adjustments throughout the game as well as needed. I think we saw this last game during Arizona, that they came out and had a few different types of looks and pressures queued up for Noah Fafita. And the first play coming back into the second half got an interception, and it caused some other turnovers, and quickly BYU was able to start building the lead over Arizona, which then put them into more predictable play calling situations. And so hopefully from our side, we'll see a little bit more of that.
Yeah, I gotta say, on our end, I am not expecting or predicting a win. Actually, we're kind of doing this simulcast podcast episodes here. So if you want to hear more of my thoughts here, check out Trevor's podcast. All the links will be in the description here, the video or the audio components. But Rangel wise, I'm hoping he can wrangle the Cougars, but he's played 12 games so far. Through that being said, he's only had 171 passing attempts through those 12 games, because last year, multiple games, he had under 10 passes in a game. This year, he's had one game where he's passed the ball more than 10 times, and just hasn't looked great. I mean, his completion percentage overall, in case anyone's just curious and just doesn't want to look it up the stat wise, he's 50.9% completion rating, 1,024 yards passing, and then he's got a 7 TD to 6 interception ratio there. So he's not putting up just incredible stats overall of, oh my gosh, he just is waiting for his right opportunity behind Bowman, who's the 7th-year guy and can get out there and just really sling it around. It is his best game of his career was, in fact, 2 years ago against KU, and I'd say best game because he actually played a whole game. He threw the ball 40 times. He had 2 touchdowns. Now, granted, it was at Kansas and was a loss, but still, with that being said, here I'm hoping he can provide a spark to the offense. He can give you guys a different look, and he can just be way more mobile under center than Bowman was able to be. Basically, Bowman would get outside the pocket and try to throw it around there, but immediately he was just met by a defender there just because he didn't really have any versatile speed. And I mean, he's closer to my age than some of the freshmen. So with that being said, he's probably not the fastest guy out there, no matter what. So I really do think that we'll have a little bit different energy on offense, but I want to ask you about your defense as well too here. You guys preseason wise had one player that was kind of Big 12 media preseason watch list, and Tyler Batty. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. Yep. What has he been able to do so far this year for you guys and helping you out defensively?
Well, Tyler Batty has been great. He's consistent, and he's gotten close. He gets consistent pressure on the QB. I don't think he's recorded a sack yet this season, so I'll have to go look at that. But actually, he's gotten close. But for example, the final game or final play for Arizona of the game this last week is on Fafita, basically tearing him down, and Fafita throws it, launches, and then it's interception. So he's getting a lot of pressure. And I think what helps too is that we have more guys that are being able to help him out and put more pressure as well. And so he's not getting the same kind of double teams that he was getting previously, which is freeing him up to do his thing. And in terms of defense, one thing I will say is our secondary is not known for being quite as big or fast or athletic as a lot of other teams, especially in the power rankings conferences. But what our defense is doing this year is that right now, so for example, past seasons in pass efficiency defense, the past 2 years, we've been 60th and then 112th respectively. And so this year, BYU is now number 1 in the nation in pass efficiency defense. And so this is just a lot of guys knowing where to be, where to play, playing team defense. And we're deep too. We've kind of tightened up the rotation a little bit, but through several games in the beginning of the season, we were playing a lot of guys out there, getting a lot of guys reps. And we had a lot of injuries last year. So we have a lot of guys deep in the depth chart that have experience. So they're able to keep guys fresh, and no matter who's out there, have confidence that they're going to be able to make plays.
Well, yeah, it's probably not what I wanted to hear, but I do love the insight either way, just because I'm anxious for the game Friday night, no matter what. Because if I'm predicting an Oklahoma State loss before the game's even kicked off, it's going to be brand new quarterback under center. It's going to be a Friday night. It's going to be a team that we lost to previously. Oh, and it's a team that we played really closely previously, but ended up pulling it out the end. And also, it doesn't help that's in Provo, Utah, with the nighttime kickoff there, where it's 9:15 Central. Hopefully all the Oklahoma State fans will be staying up watching the whole thing and partying, but I don't necessarily see that happening in our book. We're also hoping to get a middle linebacker back in Justin Wright, because we've had some injuries on defensive side. Talking about that as well with Colin Oliver and Nick Martin. Probably not playing this weekend, but with Gary Rangel do playing this weekend. A little bit hopeful that maybe that'll provide a spark for Ollie Gordon and some of the other wide receivers as well too, that just have some good stats, but are just clearly not putting all the way down here. Is there anything about Oklahoma State's team that kind of surprises you coming into this game that is a little bit different than what you thought preseason wise?
I mean, preseason, yeah. I mean, I overall, I think just overall performance. I expected. I wasn't completely surprised by, because you had some ups and downs last year early on. What was it, South Alabama? But then you went and had some very impressive wins over quality teams as well. And so I wasn't going to be completely shocked if we saw some highs and lows. But yeah, I expected Oklahoma State to be one of the toughest games on our schedule. And looking at it, I mean, you're coming off a bye week. And even though it's in Provo, we're coming off a short week with it being on Friday. And so, if you have to travel on a short week, it's ideal to be coming off of a bye week like Oklahoma State, where you have that time to rest and prep and be healed up and come in. And so this was one that definitely had me worried prior to the season. Not to say that I'm not, that I'm not taking Oklahoma State seriously as a fan. Like I wouldn't be completely shocked if we saw an upset this weekend over BYU. But so I just, it's just really the I guess, again, I would say the lack of consistency from the team overall, and just kind of what's appeared to be a drop off.
Yeah, over the past couple of seasons, there's been some noticeable, hey, what's going on here with the program type of games. The first one that comes to mind is of any Oklahoma State fan would know is at K-State, 48-0, where Spencer Sanders is out there playing games, starting quarterback, but is injured, doesn't finish out the game. And then last year, just a couple games here and there that were just bizarre that I'm not even going to talk about coaching staff wise. The UCF game, 45-3 at UCF. Granted, hadn't played there before, and it could be weird because of the weather, but still, we end up going to the Big 12 championship, and we beat OU in the same season. That generally is going to be a deal where we don't only score 3 points in a game, no matter who's it against. And of course, UCF isn't making us looking a little bit better. So it's, it's a weird deal there. And then this year, it's just proven to be an odd deal overall, honestly. The Utah game is head scratching. The K-State game is head scratching. And then, of course, West Virginia game's head scratching. So, from an Oklahoma State perspective, really hoping that we have different offensive play calling, different offensive schemes here. And I do think maybe a different quarterback will help us do that a little bit here as well, too. With all that being said here, what are your kind of expectations for BYU the rest of the season? Can you basically make this game look good for us in hindsight and not be like Utah here and end up losing every game after we play you? Are you guys going to go on and face, it looks like the toughest two games you guys got on the schedule is Utah and Arizona State, weirdly enough now.
Yeah, and I'd have to go look at the updated FPI prediction for the games, but all season, even as BYU's continued to win some games, it has been UCF that has been BYU's, according to FBI, toughest game, even over Utah, which has been crazy, which, does seem like it'll still be a tough one because it's in Florida. BYU has traditionally not done as well on the East Coast. I should know. I live on the East Coast and I've been to many of those games. And so that is still not necessarily going to be an easy one. And Utah rivalry games are always difficult, and that's at Utah this year. And so it should be tough. And then Arizona State has definitely been surprising. And so, that's also at ASU. And so there's definitely still some room for BYU to lose. And like Kansas, they have talent, and Houston, they've played other teams close, at least for parts of the game. And so again, none of these games are gimmies, but what I will say is there is not a game left on BYU's schedule that truly worries me, which worries me a little bit because it's like, okay, I don't think realistically BYU is going to go 12-0. But at this point, I think fans feel pretty good about BYU's chances of at least making it to 10 games. And so that's 4 more out of the schedule, and I feel good about that. So I don't know. It could come from anywhere as long as this team stays focused and stays grounded and continues to take one game at a time and not getting ahead of themselves, not buying hype into the hype too much, that I like their odds in any game that we have left. But again, it's the Big 12. Crazy things happen, and it is a fun conference, and always potential for upsets. And so I don't know, but like I said, we're playing with house money at this point, that we can, as fans, just take it one game at a time. And if there is a loss, it doesn't feel like it'll be detrimental like other years when you have those high expectations. Because guess what? We've already exceeded basically our expectations for the season. And so now we can just enjoy it and move on to the next one.
Yeah, that's one thing where we're in totally different spheres of the world there, because we're hoping to maybe rebound. Hey, no one's going to say that a Gundy team could not pull out 6 straight wins out of their butts here and go 9-3 and end up the season in my book. But with that being said, I'm very, very skeptical, as I have been for back-to-back podcasts now for doing the CGA Tour wise, and very interested to see how the season ends out, because basically we just have not performed up to expectations, and you guys have performed well over expectations. With all that being said here, you get back into a little bit of the game predictions wise. I know I'm putting you on the spot here. Want to see, do you have a game prediction score-wise at all? I remember mine from doing your podcast here just a little bit ago of 38-21, unfortunately, BYU. But, hey, no, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to have to name the podcast title at this point, Wrangling the Cougars, because I'm hoping that's what happens. But I'm not necessarily predicting it. I would not put any money on Oklahoma State necessarily covering the spread either. So we'll see.
Yeah, I wasn't too far off. I didn't have one. I made a prediction on my show as well, but I hadn't really prepared it. So I kind of on the spot, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say 34-17. BYU has kind of consistently been scoring in the 30s, and actually finished a couple games already with 34 points, and has only allowed one team to score more than 20 points. So that's kind of where I'm settling in at.
Yeah, I'm thinking it'll probably be about there. Unfortunately for Oklahoma State, but I do see, for any Oklahoma State fan, I do see a lot of hope here for the rest of the season. I see possibly 4 more wins coming down the stretch here. One of the games I'm also very skeptical on is homecoming, weirdly enough. I did not think Arizona State would be as good as they are, but clearly there's something to them with their rushing offense, and Oklahoma State being the worst rushing defensive team in the Big 12 does make me hopeful that we'll stop the run there. Maybe homecoming tickets, we'll just have a packed out stadium and the energy will be different, and we'll be good to go there, though. So that would be a hope. But then, Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU, and Colorado are the 4 games this season where I'm going, hey, you know what? We've got hopefully some momentum this weekend. Hopefully Oklahoma State fans have a lot to look forward to, at least a new quarterback under center. Rangel's got the reins. He's got 2 weeks to prep. That's something he hasn't had before. His dad's on Twitter letting us know that, hey, you know what? Why does he always have the toughest spots? The toughest challenges come to the toughest warriors. And I'm really hopeful at the end of the day. I know I didn't sound that way too much on your podcast, Trevor, so I'm trying to sound it a little bit more on mine here. Coming up into this Friday night game. So hopefully put this podcast out here pretty shortly as well, too. Thank you so much for joining. Any other things you think of, like, hey, you know what? If Oklahoma State was able to pull this off, this is where we would not be able to do the things we want to do, or kind of any things that you go, hey, you know what? No, we haven't lost a game yet, but we are struggling at these things here that I'd like to see us improve on a little bit better, and kind of Oklahoma State fans a little bit of hope of, hey, maybe that's what we could do to kind of hopefully shut them down and get the upset.
I know I mentioned pass defense efficiency, but one place we struggle, it seems that quarterbacks seem to have like their best running games against us oftentimes. And so that could be, and I don't know if that's, by design that BYU just says, you know what, if that's how they beat us, then we're going to live with that. If, we kind of have to pick our poison. But like Kansas State, I know the final score doesn't reflect it, but they were able to move the ball on the ground against us. And so that might be a potential. I think he'll have a harder time throwing it. We'll see, but a less experienced quarterback, it's going to be very loud at the night games. I don't know if you saw any of that K-State game, but they could not hear. There were a lot of errors. So hopefully from the Oklahoma State perspective, you have time to really work on getting the cadence down and getting everybody in sync, because there's a potential for a lot of penalties there. And but I think having the run game might help in that a little bit, and just being able to move the ball and eat up clock. So that could be something if you're able to control it. And, I would say that would be probably Oklahoma State's best chance of really kind of getting BYU off its game.
Awesome. Well, we have the guy under center now who would be able to give us the best possible quarterback runs, and at least make you guys think about the halfback read not going to Ollie Gordon and maybe some quarterback's hands for a couple of seconds longer. So looking forward to that, of course, here. We'll see how it goes this Friday. Trevor, thanks so much for joining here on the latest episode of the CGA Tour. Where can everyone find and listen to more of your guys' podcast, of course, and then also the Oklahoma State one that you did the prediction with me on?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's right here on the screen, but it says at Sats Warrior BYU, and same for YouTube. And you can find me there. I try to get several shows out each week. I try to do these kind of know your foe type episodes where you get guests with our fellow college huddle mates to break down the matchup, as well as live reactions after the game, as well as our weekly analysis and breakdown of and predictions for the upcoming week. So you can find me there. Come join me for Hate Week, and love a little friendly banter and trash talk leading up to it. But so far, Oklahoma State fans, I think, have been really cool on Twitter. So I look forward to the interactions.
Yeah, I think we're known as a very, very nice, very welcoming fan base. I know last year, seeing a lot of BYU fans make the trip to Stillwater, where it was just a miserable game overall to attend in person, where it was just kind of misting the entire time. I think my dad said it was spitting rain was his quote from it. And of course, BYU fans, with us winning in overtime, couldn't have been too much fun. But hopefully we welcome you guys back to Stillwater before too long here, and still are winning. But hopefully we have a good story to tell about this one here too. If you're not already, please follow, subscribe, like at the CGA Tour here below on YouTube. Trying to grow that following the best I can. And then if you're not already, definitely follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter for the latest news, notes, and updates from the podcast, and get all the college huddle stuff as well too. See what the Big 12 huddle podcast episodes that I co-host as well there every Wednesday. And those come on Thursdays, covering the whole Big 12. And then lastly here, I got to say it as always, go Pokes, and hoping for a victory here this weekend in Provo, and hopefully a Saturday morning where I wake up and I go, hey, you know what? It's nice to have a win, but I'm hopefully just seeing some optimism here either way this weekend. So, Trevor, thanks so much again here for joining on the latest episode of the CGA Tour. Catch you guys again soon.
Thanks for having me.